In 1985, France was testing nuclear weapons in the island of Marora. Greenpeace sent the Rainbow Warrior to test the radioactivity in the waters surrounding the island. They had also been leading multiple protests against nuclear testing from France and all other countries worldwide. When France attacked that boat and sunk it, Greenpeace supporters became very mad, fueling the protests, making them more often and more passionate. France says no protest will stop them, and any protest will be met with force. Greenpeace sent out a second boat called Greenpeace to test the water, even though scientists confirmed France's claims about the environmental impact of their testing being minimal. Greenpeace proposed a Nuclear Non-Proliferation Act for France to sign, and France refused and was not open to any compromise. Because Greenpeace is an international organization, people all over the world became scared of France and what they would end up doing to the environment, even with scientists confirming France's claims. At this time, Greenpeace emphasized the fact that something needs to be done now before it's too late, and they were looking for proof of this to further justify their protests.
Greenpeace has also been fighting against deforestation and illegal logging practices since 1991, beginning with German magazines and how they produce their paper. Since that time, Greenpeace has been involved in many events around the world helping promote safe forest practices. Beginning in 1992, Greenpeace began campaigning in Brazil to protect the Amazon rainforest. During the 14 years from 1992 until 2006, Greenpeace negotiated deals with the Brazilian government to protect 8.4 million hectares of land, about 32,000 square miles of forest, from ever being touched by loggers again. Greenpeace has also spent a lot of time fighting to protect the forests of Canada. In 2004, Greenpeace secured pledges from 105 Canadian magazine and book publishers promising to move away from using paper supplied by ancient Canadian forests. Also, after a combined over 22 years of campaigning, Greenpeace was able to protect over 300,000 square miles of Canada's Great Bear and Boreal forests from being logged. Working with the Canadian government and independent logging companies, Greenpeace was able to work to protect the natural environment of Canada. Even though Greenpeace has done a lot of positive work by protecting endangered forests, there are many people opposed to Greenpeace's work. During a campaign in Alaska, a Greenpeace employee was interviewed alongside locals who were involved in the timber industry. Those people were very anti-Greenpeace because their livelihood depends directly on what Greenpeace is fighting against. The fight to keep on logging has become very relevant for those working in the lumber industry, especially as we move into a more paperless world.
In 1997, a year after a near-fatal car wreck fractured her skull, Julia Butterfly Hill climbed up into a 1,000-year-old California redwood and would not come down for another 738 days. Julia was doing this as a form of civil disobedience to protest the clear-cutting and logging of the California redwoods. Hill's protest was met with resistance from the Pacific Lumber Co. They tried everything to get her down, from flying a helicopter near the tree to blocking her team from bringing her food, but nothing stopped Julia. As she sat up in the tree, she gained national attention. The Red Hot Chili Peppers even wrote about her in their song, Can't Stop. She inspired many Americans to fight for their environment and their world. As she gained global attention, she began to win the conflict, and on December 18, 1999, she came down and was rewarded with the protection of the tree and a 3-acre buffer zone. Julia Hill kept the issue on the front page and brought awareness to all of America.
There was a 13-month-long tree sit at UC Santa Cruz in 2007. The protest kick-started in November 2007 with a march. Protesters climbed up into trees and stayed on 75-foot high platforms. The university filed a lawsuit seeking injunction against the demonstration, saying it was illegal and unsanitary occupation. In the meantime, supporters were arrested if they tried to bring food or supplies for the protesters. They were granted the injunction in March 2008, but the protesters refused to come down. Eventually, the protesters came down, and the police made multiple arrests. The final person came down from the tree in December 2008, and the tree sit ended peacefully. An officer on the scene reported that the protesters left ropes and other equipment hanging, as well as blankets, food, and human waste. The university later said that they were going to replant 23 redwoods and all the oaks on a 1.5-acre site. Another tree sit happened in Australia in 2011, where Miranda Gibson climbed a tree in Tasmania's forest for 449 days. While in the tree, she blogged her experience and tried to influence others. She unfortunately was forced to come down from the tree when a bushfire broke out 1.5 kilometers from her tree. This type of protest is inspired by Julia Butterfly Hill when she started her protest in 1997, where she was tree sitting for 738 days.
Tree spiking is a form of eco-terrorism in which a nail is hammered into a tree at an angle so that you cannot see the nail. When the tree is being cut down, the chainsaw will hit the nail and the blade will break off into very sharp pieces. The only tree spiking injury took place in 1987. George Alexander, an employee of the Pacific Lumber Co., was nearly decapitated while logging a tree. His chainsaw hit the nail, and a 12-foot section of the blade broke off, cutting his jugular vein and breaking his jaw in 5 places.
Environmental protests just like these are still happening today because there are enough people who believe if we keep living in the selfish manner we live today, then we truly are running out of time.